Prologue, the Inferno. In her final moments of consciousness, the scents that filled Evelyn Devereux's senses were the acrid sting of turpentine and burning canvas, mingled with the strangely sweet perfume of her favorite fragrance, midnight jasmine, a gift from her husband Julian for their wedding anniversary. Flames greedily devoured her art gallery, the pride of her life. The masterpieces she had either created herself or collected from around the world were turning to charcoal before her very eyes. But hotter than the fire was the wound in her chest, a gash cut deep to the bone by a silver letter opener. Blood poured from it, staining her expensive white silk gown into a grotesque, blooming rose. Her best friend, Claire Windsor, stood a short distance away, the blood-drenched weapon still in her hand. Claire's face, usually a mask of sweet smiles, was now twisted into a mask of rapturous glee. "Why?" Evelyn forced out the word, her voice as raspy as sandpaper. "Why?" Claire laughed, a sound that pierced through the crackling flames. "Because you have too much, Evelyn. The Devereux fortune, the city's adoration, and Julian. You're nothing but a canary, coddled in a gilded cage, naively believing the whole world loves you. You never deserved him." "Julian," Evelyn whispered, her gaze piercing through the wall of fire to the man she had loved for 10 years. Julian Devereux, eternally suave, hailed as the golden boy of the New York art scene, stood silently at the gallery's entrance. His eyes were as cold and impassive as marble, watching the inferno as if it were a painting of hell that had nothing to do with him. He didn't move to stop it, didn't call for help, didn't show a flicker of emotion. When his gaze met hers, Evelyn saw the answer. It wasn't indifference. It was approval. He knew. He had always known. This was all part of his plan. Claire was the knife that stabbed her, but Julian was the hand that held it. Her fortune, her gallery, her very life, all were just stepping stones, spoils of war for their love story. Her so-called decade of profound love had been nothing more than a meticulously crafted 10-year deception. Her love, the thing she had been most proud of, was her true gilded cage. Regret and fury, potent as venom, flooded her senses. She shouldn't have trusted him. She shouldn't have handed him the keys to her family's empire. She shouldn't have loved him. Thick smoke choked her lungs as darkness surged like a tide. In the final second before her consciousness faded, Evelyn swore with all the strength of her soul, If I get another chance, I will make them pay. In blood. Act 1. Return to the cage. Chapter 1. The Awakening. The jarring warmth of sunlight spilling through a bay window roused Evelyn. She shot upright, her eyes flying open to a familiar sight, a sprawling bed dressed in fine Egyptian cotton sheets. The air was filled with the gentle fragrance of lilies, not the acrid stench of fire and blood. Instinctively, she touched her chest. The skin was smooth, unbroken. She was alive. Evelyn stumbled to the vanity. The woman in the mirror was a ghost from a past life. It was her, but at 25, her skin firm, her eyes clear, still holding a trace of the naive innocence of a sheltered heiress. Her long hair cascaded over the shoulders of her silk nightgown. The digital calendar on the wall displayed a date that sent a chill down her spine. June 12, 2024. It was the day before her wedding to Julian Devereux. She had been reborn. sent back a decade to the very beginning of the tragedy, to the day she had willingly locked herself in her own cage. A wave of dizzying euphoria, followed by a surge of cold, hard hatred, made her tremble. She hadn't perished in that fire. She wouldn't be a forgotten footnote in someone else's love story. She was back, armed with memories from hell and a burning desire for revenge. The door creaked open and a figure entered. It was Julian. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored white shirt, his golden hair catching the morning light. He carried a breakfast tray, smoked salmon, avocado, a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice, and wore the same charming smile that had once captivated her. "Good morning, my bride-to-be." His voice was as smooth as honey. "Did you sleep well? Tomorrow you'll be Mrs. Devereux. Are you nervous?" In her past life, these words would have sent her shyly into his arms, her heart fluttering with anticipation. Now his handsome face, his gentle voice, were more repulsive to her than any demon. She could see with terrifying clarity the greedy, calculating heart that beat beneath that perfect facade. Evelyn suppressed the murderous rage bubbling within her. She lowered her gaze, her voice taking on a soft, tremulous quality, the artist in her perfectly mimicking emotion. "A little. Julian, I'm a little scared." "Scared of what, my silly girl?" Julian set the tray down and sat beside her, pulling her into a gentle embrace. His hug was warm and strong, but to Evelyn it felt like being coiled by a cold-blooded serpent. The scent of his expensive cologne, once so intoxicating, now mingled with the phantom smell of smoke in her memory, making her stomach churn. "I'm scared that I'm not good enough for you," she mumbled into his chest, playing the part of a love-struck woman overwhelmed by her good fortune. "The Devereux family is so prominent, so powerful in New York. And I'm just a dreamer who paints. I don't know anything about the real world." A flicker of satisfaction, almost imperceptible, crossed Julian's eyes. He loved her insecurity, her purity. A naive, orphaned heiress with access to immense wealth was his perfect prey. Since the death of her father, the venerable Mr. Linwood, she had been the sole heir to a vast corporate empire and a labyrinthine trust fund, and she was utterly clueless about how to manage it. "Nonsense," he murmured, stroking her hair. "You're the most brilliant, pure-hearted woman I've ever met. You don't need to understand all that complicated business. Leave that to me. You just continue being my angel, flying free in your world of art. I'll build a fortress to shield you from all the storms." A fortress to shield me. What a beautiful lie. In her past life, she had believed those words and step by step, had transferred the management rights of her father's empire to him through prenuptial authorizations and postnuptial joint management agreements. She had thought it a testament to their love and trust. In reality, they were her death warrants. "Julian," Evelyn looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, a look pitiful enough to melt any man's heart. "Tomorrow at the altar, when the priest asks me, what should I say?" "You'll say, 'I do, my love,'" Julian whispered, leaning in to kiss her. Evelyn artfully turned her head, so his lips brushed her cheek instead. She rose and walked to the window, gazing out at the garden of white roses she had designed herself. "Julian," she said, her voice laced with a carefully crafted hesitation, "I was thinking, I'd like to make a small change to our prenuptial agreement. Chapter 2: The First Gift. Julian's smile tightened for a fraction of a second before relaxing back into its usual charm. Darling, what brought this on? I thought our lawyers had finalized everything. We had several meetings about it, remember? Their prenuptial agreement was a masterpiece of legal maneuvering, engineered by Julian and his team. On the surface, it protected Evelyn's rights as the owner of her premarital assets. But buried within the legalese were several key clauses, such as one that granted the authorized party, Julian, the right to make independent investment decisions under conditions mutually deemed beneficial for asset growth. This vague language gave him enormous leeway for the backdoor dealings he had planned. It's not that I don't trust you, Evelyn said, turning back to him, wringing her hands in a show of anxious vulnerability. It's just, I had a dream about my father last night. He was so worried about me. You know how he always wanted me to be more independent, not to rely on others like a child. I want to add a small addendum to the agreement, as a way to honor his memory. What kind of addendum? Julian's senses went on high alert. He stood and walked toward her. His eyes narrowed with a new scrutiny. I want to establish an independent family trust oversight committee, Evelyn said softly, as if it were a minor detail. It would consist of 3 people. Besides our respective lawyers, I want to invite my father's most trusted business partner and friend, Mr. Arthur Vanderbilt, to serve as a third-party independent supervisor. Any major decision regarding my premarital assets, say, any investment over $1 million or any change in equity, would require a 2/3 majority approval from this committee. Arthur Vanderbilt. The name struck Julian like a physical blow. In the cutthroat world of Wall Street, Arthur was known as the shark who never bleeds. A shrewd, conservative titan who had been fiercely loyal to Evelyn's father and treated Evelyn like his own daughter. With Arthur as a supervisor, Julian's plans to manipulate the trust funds would become nearly impossible. Darling, that's very sudden, Julian said. His voice a soothing balm meant to dissuade her. Mr. Vanderbilt is getting on in years. We shouldn't bother him with such matters. Besides, having an outsider involved in our personal finances. Doesn't it seem a little strange? Don't you trust me, your future husband? He played his trump card, emotional blackmail. He knew the old Evelyn would have crumbled under it. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes and began to stream down her face. Of course I trust you. I want my father to be at peace. Julian, this is my only request. Think of it as my wedding gift from you. Please. If you say no, I don't think I'll have the courage to say, I do tomorrow. The image of my father's disappointed face in my dream. It's breaking my heart. She had turned his own tactic against him, framing her demand as an emotional, non-negotiable plea. She was the dutiful daughter honoring her father's dying wish, a position he couldn't reasonably refuse without looking greedy and manipulative. Julian's fists clenched behind his back, his nails digging into his palms. He looked at her tear-streaked face, his mind racing. The clause was a massive obstacle, but not an insurmountable one. Once they were married, he would have years to slowly sideline the old man, or better yet, convince Evelyn to voluntarily dissolve the committee herself. The immediate priority was to get through the wedding, to legally bind her to him as Mrs. Devereux. All right, don't cry, you silly girl," he finally relented, his face softening into a mask of doting affection. He stepped forward and gently wiped her tears. "Whatever makes you happy. I'll have my lawyer contact Arthur's office right away and amend the agreement. Now, can you be my happy bride again?" "Yes," Evelyn sobbed with relief, throwing herself into his arms. But over his shoulder, where he couldn't see, her eyes were as cold and hard as diamonds. "This is just the first of my wedding gifts to you, Julian. Everything you took from me in our last life I will take back with interest." Chapter 3. The Grand Wedding and the Undercurrent. The wedding at St. Patrick's Cathedral was the event of the season, a fairy tale affair attended by New York's elite. The media dubbed it the wedding of the century, a union not just of two people, but of two powerful dynasties, the rising Devereux art investment empire and the old money Linwood industrial family. Evelyn was a vision in a custom-made French designer gown, a cascade of silk and lace embedded with 1,000 tiny "Child," Arthur whispered, his voice grave. "Remember, no matter what happens, I am always in your corner." Evelyn gave him a grateful smile. At the altar, Julian waited, his eyes shining with triumph. To him, yesterday's hiccup was just a childish whim. Once the vows were said, Evelyn, and the mountain of gold she represented, would be his. "Do you, Julian Devereux, take Evelyn Linwood to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." Julian's voice was deep and resonant, earning a soft, appreciative laugh from the pews. "And do you, Evelyn Linwood, take?" Evelyn looked up, her gaze meeting Julian's through her veil. An image of his cold, impassive face at the fire flashed through her mind. A wave of nausea washed over her. She was tempted, so tempted, to say, "I don't," and walk away. But that would be too easy, too clean. Revenge, she now understood, was a dish best served cold, and she was just beginning to set the table. She took a breath and in a voice as clear and sweet as a bell replied, "I do." The exchange of rings, the kiss, the eruption of applause. Claire Windsor, her maid of honor, stood beside her, dabbing at tears of joy as she straightened Evelyn's train. "You're so beautiful, darling," she whispered. "I wish you all the happiness in the world." Evelyn looked at Claire's beaming, treacherous face and thought, "Oh, you will, Claire. You will soon see that my happiness will be built upon your misery." Married life was, on the surface, a perfect storybook romance. Julian was the model husband, attentive and doting. He encouraged her artistic pursuits, even purchasing an entire building on Fifth Avenue to house her private gallery, which he gallantly named the Heart of Evelyn. This was the very gallery that had become her tomb. Evelyn accepted the gift with grace. She threw herself into her work, curating exhibitions and painting, appearing to the world as the same ethereal artist she had always been. She feigned complete disinterest in Julian's business affairs. Whenever he tentatively presented her with documents to sign, she would smile sweetly and say, "Darling, this is all Greek to me. Why don't you run it by the Oversight Committee? I'll feel much better if Uncle Arthur has a look at it." After being rebuffed several times, Julian, though irritated, became more convinced than ever that she was truly clueless about business. He lowered his guard, focusing his energy on finding ways to outmaneuver the old shark, Vanderbilt. He needed money, vast sums of it, to fund his ambitious investment portfolio, and Evelyn's trust was the whale he was determined to harpoon. Meanwhile, within the safe haven of her gallery, Evelyn began to weave her web. Her first move was to hire a private investigator. She chose Mark Randall, the very same tabloid journalist who, in her past life, had posthumously exposed Julian and Claire's affair. Last time, Mark had been chasing a sensational headline. This time he would be working for her. They met in a discreet booth at a rain-swept downtown diner. Evelyn slid a thick envelope of cash across the table, along with a photograph. "I don't care how you do it," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "I want to know everything about this woman, Claire Windsor. Her social circles, her spending habits, who she meets, who she calls, and every single transaction in her bank accounts." Mark glanced at the photo of the innocent-looking woman, then at the thickness of the envelope, and whistled. "Mrs. Devereux, looks like your best friend is causing you some serious trouble." "She will be," Evelyn said flatly. "But the trouble is just getting started. There's someone else I want you to look into." She passed him a photo of Julian. "The same rules apply. I want to know everything, especially his private business dealings." Mark looked at her, a new, intrigued glint in his eye. "Investigating the husband and the best friend at the same time? Mrs. Devereux, you have a very interesting marriage. Just get me the information, Mark. Don't ask questions you won't like the answers to." Her gaze was so cold it made him sit up straight. At that very moment, Claire Windsor was pacing anxiously in her apartment. She and Julian had just had another fight. Since the wedding, Julian had become more cautious, their meetings less frequent. He was showering her with money, but the title of Mrs. Devereux seemed further away than ever. Her doorbell rang. When she opened it, she was shocked to see Evelyn standing there, holding a box from their favorite patisserie. "Evelyn!" Claire was both surprised and delighted. "What are you doing here? You should have called." Evelyn smiled and swept into the apartment, placing the box on the coffee table. "I missed you, so I thought I'd drop by. I brought your favorite Black Forest cake." Her eyes casually scanned the room, her gaze finally landing on a man's jacket, carelessly tossed over the back of the sofa. She recognized the style, the brand, immediately. It was the jacket she had personally selected for Julian's birthday last week. Act 2, The Masquerade. Chapter 4. The Seeds of Doubt. "That jacket looks familiar," Evelyn said, her tone neutral. She walked to the sofa and picked it up, her fingertips tracing the custom gold thread monogram she had designed herself, a stylized J. It was meant to be a unique, intimate touch. The blood drained from Claire's face. "Oh, that's my brother's," she stammered. "Yes, my brother's. He was here yesterday and left in a hurry." "Really? I didn't know you had a brother named Julian," Evelyn said, turning to her with a faint, unreadable smile. It was a smile that sent a shiver of fear down Claire's spine. There was something different about Evelyn today, something deep and unsettling behind her usually clear eyes. I was joking," Claire forced a laugh. It belongs to a friend of mine. His name is Jack." "Yes, Jack." His initial is also J. She mentally congratulated herself on her quick thinking. Claire, Evelyn interrupted, stepping closer. She reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind Claire's ear, an old familiar gesture of intimacy. We're best friends, aren't we? I would support you through anything, including matters of the heart. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You're in love with a married man, aren't you? Claire froze, her body rigid with shock. She stared at Evelyn, speechless. Evelyn didn't wait for a reply, continuing in a tone overflowing with feigned sympathy. I understand. The heart wants what it wants. It must be so painful, loving someone you can't be with openly. And he just happens to be a friend of my husband's, right? That's why you're so nervous. She had masterfully redirected the suspicion, offering Claire a plausible, safe narrative to cling to. Claire's defenses began to crumble under Evelyn's understanding words. Her own jealousy and resentment found a welcome outlet. She leaned into the role of the tragic, star-crossed lover. Evelyn, I'm so sorry, Claire choked out, squeezing Evelyn's hand. I didn't mean for it to happen. I tried to forget him, but I can't. He's so good to me, but he can never give me a future. Silly girl, you have nothing to be sorry for, Evelyn said, patting her back like a comforting mother. There's no right or wrong in love. The one at fault is the man. If he's married, he has no business leading you on. A glint of steel hardened Evelyn's eyes. She wasn't here to expose them. She was here to set them against each other. She would turn Julian's pawn into a weapon against him. She would make him feel the sting of betrayal from a trusted confidant. Claire, listen to me, Evelyn said, her expression growing serious. You can't go on like this. You deserve better than to be someone's secret. You need to think about your future. But what can I do? Claire asked, her voice laced with despair. He has a family, a reputation. If I make a scene, I'll be the one who gets destroyed. Money, Evelyn said, the word hanging in the air. Men are unreliable, but money will never betray you. He owes you for all the years of your life you've given him. It's not just for you. It's for the fruit of your love. The fruit of our love. Claire echoed, confused. Don't try to hide it from me, Evelyn said, her gaze dropping meaningfully to Claire's flat stomach. You haven't had an appetite for weeks, you look pale. You're pregnant, aren't you? The words struck Claire like a bolt of lightning. She wasn't pregnant. But Evelyn's suggestion planted a seed in her mind, a seed that began to grow with ferocious speed. What if I were pregnant with Julian's child? That would give her the ultimate leverage. Even if he was reluctant, Julian, obsessed with legacy and lineage, could never completely abandon the mother of his heir. Seeing the calculating gleam in Claire's eyes, Evelyn knew her plan was halfway to fruition. Chapter 5. The False Leverage. After leaving Claire's apartment, Evelyn immediately went to see her OB/GYN, Dr. Linda Chen, a middle-aged woman with whom she had a friendly relationship. Linda, I need you to do something for me, Evelyn said, sliding a thick envelope across the desk. She laid out her plan. Dr. Chen listened, her face growing pale with shock. Evelyn, are you insane? Falsifying a medical report is illegal. It would destroy my career. This is too dangerous. I'm not insane. I'm just taking back what's mine." Evelyn's gaze was unyielding. "Linda, my father funded your clinic when you were on the verge of bankruptcy. I'm asking you to repay that kindness now. When this is over, I will give you enough money to retire anywhere in the world you choose. If you don't help me, I have ways of making sure your medical license runs into some complications." Carrot and stick. The most effective tools she had learned from Julian himself. To fight a devil, one had to be more devilish. Under immense pressure and temptation, Dr. Chen finally agreed. A few days later, just as planned, a radiant Claire presented Julian with a seemingly flawless pregnancy report, personally signed by Dr. Chen. Julian's reaction was not the joy she had anticipated. He stared at the report, his brow furrowed with suspicion and annoyance. An illegitimate child was not leverage. It was a scandal, a stain on his perfectly curated life, especially now, as he was trying to solidify his power within the Devereaux Group. "Are you sure it's mine?" he asked coldly. The question was a dagger to Claire's heart. "Julian Devereaux, after all these years, how dare you question me?" she shrieked. "Who else could it be?" "One can never be too sure," Julian replied, his mind already churning with rumors he'd heard about Claire's social life. The first irreparable crack appeared in their relationship. Meanwhile, Evelyn began the second phase of her plan. Under the guise of scouting for new European artists, she flew to Paris. Her true objective was to meet Pierre Dupont, the gambling-addicted, destitute nephew of the late designer whose work would have been used to frame her. In a small, smoke-filled Parisian bistro, Evelyn met the man. She didn't waste time. She pushed a briefcase across the table. €500,000, she said, in exchange for the exclusive rights to your uncle's design archives. And for your cooperation in a small piece of theater. Back in New York, Julian was at his wits' end. He was juggling Claire's pregnancy, and more pressingly, a catastrophic loss in an overseas energy venture. He desperately needed to siphon funds from Evelyn's trust to cover it up, but Arthur Vanderbilt was proving to be an impenetrable wall. As he sat in his office, stewing in frustration, an anonymous package was delivered to his desk. Inside was a collection of photographs. They showed his true love, Claire, in a series of intimate situations with different men at various hotels. The photos were expertly staged by Mark Randall, ambiguous enough to be deniable, but suggestive enough to plant a seed of poisonous doubt. Beneath the photos was a forged bank statement showing large recent cash deposits into Claire's account from unknown mail sources. It was Mark's masterpiece, and Evelyn's second gift to Julian. Julian stared at the photos, his handsome face contorted with rage. What little trust he had in Claire evaporated. He was now convinced the child wasn't his. She was trying to blackmail him with another man's bastard. He stormed to Claire's apartment and threw the photos in her face. "You tramp! How dare you try to pass another man's child off as mine?" he roared. No matter how much Claire cried or pleaded her innocence, Julian wouldn't listen. His only thought was to get rid of this problem, to make her and her bastard disappear. He made a call to his fixer, a man named Victor, an ex-Special Forces soldier who handled his dirty work. "I need you to take care of a problem," he said, his voice cold as ice. "Make her miscarry. Make it look like an accident. Be clean." Chapter 6. The hunter becomes the hunted. When Evelyn returned from Paris, she brought a storm with her. She hosted a new exhibition at her gallery, The Forgotten Star, a retrospective on the work of the late Julien Dupont. In her past life, this exhibition never happened. This time, Evelyn was taking the knife that was meant for her and displaying it for the world to see, breaking its blade before it could ever touch her. The opening night was a glittering affair. Evelyn, in an elegant black gown, moved through the crowd with a newfound confidence that surprised many. She was no longer the shy canary hiding behind her husband. Julien was there, of course. He watched his wife hold court, feeling a strange, unfamiliar sense of losing control. He tried to approach her to put on a show of marital affection, but she deftly sidestepped him, always busy with a guest. Then, an uninvited guest blew the party apart. Claire Windsor. Pale and haggard, she burst past security and ran straight to Julien. "You monster!" she screamed, her voice raw with desperation and fury. "You tried to have my baby killed." The night before, a motorcycle had accidentally struck Claire as she was leaving her building. While she wasn't actually pregnant, the terrifying incident made her realize the brutal truth. She was completely expendable. A cornered animal will bite back. She decided to burn everything to the ground. The room fell silent. Every eye, every camera, turned to the unfolding drama. Julien's face went white with rage. He grabbed Claire's arm. "Are you insane? What nonsense are you spouting here?" "Nonsense." Claire ripped her arm away, pulling the forged pregnancy report from her purse and holding it high. "You tried to murder us to get rid of your problem. You hypocrite. Tell them all your marriage to Evelyn is a sham, a plot to steal her family's fortune." "Shut up," Julien snapped, losing all composure. He raised his hand to strike her, but his hand was caught in midair by Evelyn. "Julien," she said, her voice quiet but carrying across the silent room, "we don't hit women in my gallery." She watched the scene unfold with the calm detachment of a spectator. But she was the director. She had instructed Mark Randall to tip off the media. She had anonymously sent Claire the invitation. She wanted them to tear each other apart on the grandest stage possible. "And you, Claire?" Evelyn turned to her, her eyes filled with a chilling pity. "Are you so sure that child was ever Julien's?" She gave a subtle nod to someone in the crowd. Dr. Linda Chen, accompanied by 2 lawyers, stepped forward. "According to the most recent tests conducted at our clinic," Dr. Chen announced to the sea of cameras, "Ms. Windsor is not, and has not recently been pregnant. The report she presented to Mr. Devereux was a fabrication." Now it was Claire's turn to be stunned into silence. She never imagined Evelyn would have this card to play. "No. That's impossible," she stammered. Evelyn walked to her side. "You see, Claire," she said softly, "the love you tried to win with a lie was just destroyed by another lie. In the end, we were both just pawns in his game. The only difference is, You were the more pathetic one." She looked at the utterly broken Claire and the pale, cornered Julian. She felt no satisfaction, only a cold, empty void. This wasn't enough. It was nowhere near enough. Act 3. Rebirth from the Ashes. Chapter 7. The Final Line of Defense. The gallery scandal was a hurricane that tore through New York high society. Julian Devereux's perfect husband persona was shattered overnight. The Devereux Group's stock plummeted. Claire Windsor became a city-wide laughingstock, facing multiple charges for forgery and defamation. Julian attempted damage control. He threw Claire under the bus, painting himself as the victim of a deranged stalker. Then he went home to Evelyn and fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness, hoping to salvage their marriage, and by extension her fortune. "Evelyn, my love, forgive me," he wept, his performance Oscar-worthy. "I was a fool. I was blinded by that woman. The only one I have ever loved is you." Evelyn watched him silently until his tirade of lies ran out of steam. "Julian," she said, her voice terrifyingly calm, "do you really think any of that matters now?" She tossed a document onto the coffee table in front of him. "The divorce papers. I've already signed." Julian snatched the papers. His eyes widened in horror as he read the terms. Not only was Evelyn reclaiming full control of all her premarital assets, but she was also invoking the infidelity clause in their prenuptial agreement, demanding a penalty payment of a truly astronomical sum. It was enough to force him into personal bankruptcy. "You're insane." He scrambled to his feet, his mask of contrition gone, revealing the snarling beast beneath. "Evelyn, don't forget, many of the company's projects are tied to us as a couple. If you ruin me, the Devereux Group will suffer immense damage. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face." "Am I?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Then I'll see you in court." Julian had never imagined the docile canary would sprout such sharp talons. He mobilized his legal army, prepared to fight her for every last penny. But Evelyn had one last card to play. She went to see Arthur Vanderbilt. In Arthur's penthouse office overlooking Central Park, Evelyn finally told him everything. Not the secret of her rebirth, but the long, painful story of her suspicions and her secret investigation into Julian. She laid out the evidence Mark Randall had gathered, proof of Julian's asset transfers, his high-risk investments using her funds as collateral, and a detailed accounting of the money he had siphoned to cover his losses. The evidence was meticulous, down to every transaction record and secretly recorded phone call. Arthur examined the damning files, then looked at the strong, transformed young woman before him, and sighed a long, heavy sigh. "You've grown up, child," he said, his voice thick with sorrow. "Your father was right about you. You're stronger than he ever knew. I'm so sorry for what you've endured." "It's not over yet, Uncle Arthur," Evelyn said. "Julian won't go down without a fight. His biggest leverage is the handful of major projects we co-own. He'll use them to try and force my hand." "He will not." Arthur's eyes glinted with the cold fire of a shark. "It's time for Mr. Devereux to pay for his greed." As a veteran of Wall Street, Arthur's methods were far more sophisticated than Julian's. He used his influence on the board of the Devereux Group, rallying other shareholders to call for a vote of no confidence in Julian, citing the catastrophic damage his personal scandals have inflicted on the company's reputation. Simultaneously, he mobilized his own capital, launching a precise, devastating short-selling attack on Julian's most vulnerable investment projects. Julian's financial empire, already teetering, crumbled like a house of cards. Chapter 8: The Gilded Ashes. The day before their divorce hearing, a desperate and cornered Julian committed his final, frantic act. He broke into the gallery, the monument to his love that had become the monument to his shame. He was going to destroy it, destroy everything Evelyn held dear. If he was going to hell, he would drag her down with him. History, in a twisted way, repeated itself. When Evelyn arrived, summoned by the fire department, the gallery was already engulfed in flames. But this time, she was not the victim bleeding on the floor. She stood behind the police line, watching the inferno with a calm, detached gaze. Arthur and Mark stood by her side, Mark's team filming everything. The firefighters eventually subdued the blaze. Inside, they found a body, burned beyond recognition, identified as Julian Devereux. He had intended to set the fire and escape, but was trapped by a falling support beam. He died in the hell of his own making. Next to his body, they found another, Victor, his fixer. It seemed Julian had tried to silence his last loose end before setting the fire, and in the ensuing struggle, had killed him. The fire was meant to cover up a murder. Murder, arson, fraud. Julian Devereux, the golden boy, had written his own sordid, pathetic end. A few days later, Evelyn stood before the ruins of her gallery. Everything had been reduced to ash, just like her 10 years of deceived love. But she felt no grief, because beneath the ashes, new life could grow. She watched the sun rise over the city, and for the first time, felt a sense of profound, untethered freedom. She was no one's wife, no one's canary in a gilded cage. She was simply Evelyn Devereux, a woman finally ready to live for herself. Epilogue. 1 year later, Paris. A new gallery named The Phoenix celebrated its grand opening on the banks of the Seine. Its proprietor was Evelyn Devereux. With the restitution from Julian's bankrupt estate and a new collection of her own vibrant paintings, she had begun a new chapter. At the opening, she wore a magnificent fire-red gown, her confidence and radiance drawing every eye in the room. Arthur Vanderbilt raised a glass of champagne to her. "You've surpassed your father," he said with a proud smile. Mark Randall, now the founder of New York's most successful investigative news website, had flown in for the event. He handed her a business card. "Congratulations, Ms. Devereux. If you ever have any more problems that need solving, you know who to call. I'll even give you a discount." Evelyn laughed and raised her glass to her friends. Just then, a man approached her. He had a cascade of unruly dark curls and clear, intense eyes. His name was Leo, a brilliant young sculptor she had met in Paris, talented but not yet famous. Over the past year, they had bonded over their shared love of art, becoming close friends. "Your paintings," Leo said, his voice full of genuine admiration. "They're so full of life now. Before they were beautiful, but it always felt like they were behind a pane of glass." Evelyn looked at him, and thought of the man who had once told her she only needed to be his little angel. She smiled, a real, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. "That," she said, "is because the cage is finally open, and the bird is free to fly." She no longer needed anyone to build a fortress for her. She was the sky, then,